Hi, Sean Dobson here. Um, like you, I've been reading the newspaper, and I'm puzzled by the failure for the Democrats to work out their differences and pass some version of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. The failure is puzzling because between them, Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer have 111 years of experience as parliamentarian deal makers. Um, and it's puzzling because these experienced deal makers don't seem yet, anyway, to have tried what strikes me as a very obvious path forward. So first, let's look at the substance of what a final deal would look like, and then the process, which is equally important. And remember now, I'm coming at it from a left-wing standpoint, okay? So I'm not advocating surrender at all. I think there's a way for everyone to win here. Okay, so substantively, the holdouts are the conservative Democrats led by Sinema, Manchin, and to an extent on the House side, a gang led by Gottheimer. When you look at Manchin, he wants to trim it down. He says, well, he's for the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. He says publicly he wants to trim down the reconciliation bill from its current level of 3.5 trillion down to 1.5. And then on top of that, it's obvious that he also wants some kind of extra goodies for West Virginia in some way, no doubt connected to the coal industry. And we'll get back to that in a second. Sinema has been cagier. She talks in general terms about slimming down the reconciliation bill. And beyond that, though, she refuses to say anything specific, except maybe she's hinted she wants to means test some of the new programs in the reconciliation bill. And Gottheimer and his crowd of centrist Democrats in the House also are talking along those lines. So substantively, if the conservatives could agree on a single counteroffer, then substantively that would look like the infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion, plus a slimmed down version of the reconciliation bill, slimmed down from its current 3.5 down to a $1.5 trillion package, plus probably some sort of means testing, plus goodies for their own districts. And the House people like Gottheimer would just go along with whatever Manchin and Sinema could agree to, because they know very well that they can't get the kinds of goodies for their districts that Manchin can, because all those House guys, especially Gottheimer, are much more easily they're much more vulnerable to a primary challenge, the Democratic primary, for their treasonous behavior. So they're just going to go along with whatever Manchin and Sinema want. Okay, so that's the substance on the conservative side. This seems to be what they want. And then it would be up to the progressives to simply agree to meet them halfway. Well, what would that look like? Well, we can all agree on the infrastructure bill. There's no dispute there. As for the reconciliation bill, what's the halfway point between 3.5 and 1.5 trillion? Well, obviously it's 2.5 trillion. So people like Bernie Sanders and Jayapal should agree to a $2.5 trillion overall reconciliation bill. And there's a million ways you could slim that down. One way would be to agree to cosmetic means testing. Cosmetic meaning it would only exclude the wealthiest Americans from participation in those programs. So that substantively the vast majority of Americans could participate in the various new healthcare benefits and paid family leave and stuff like that. But cosmetically, it gives the conservatives the ability to proclaim some sort of victory that they imposed means testing. And then finally, the progressives would have to agree to the goodies and giveaways for states like West Virginia and Arizona. That's politics. They just got to live with it. Okay, so that's the substance of it. As we all know, though, in politics, process is just as important. So the process for this, and I'm amazed that this just hasn't happened yet. I don't understand why someone as experienced as Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer haven't figured this out yet. Biden has to lead on this. He has to be the deal maker. Why? He's the president of the United States, okay? He's embodies national unity, much more than Pelosi or Schumer. He just won a landslide national presidential election, and he has a mandate for the Build Back Better agenda. Um, he's also far and away the most unifying force in the Democratic Party. He's our president. It's just a no-brainer. Uh, Obviously, he can offer a neutral site for the negotiations off of Capitol Hill at the White House, or better yet, at Camp David, where he could kind of lock them up and keep them prisoner until they agree to a deal. And then finally, as the president, he's best equipped to promise people things. He can promise to publicly support whatever legislation they want or need, and/or he could just promulgate it by executive order. So he's got a lead here. He's got to be LBJ and take control of the process. Pelosi and Schumer should be down with that. Okay, so what does the process look like? Well, Biden has to start by insisting that the conservative Democrats get together in a room and come up with a written counteroffer. Written, okay? It's in writing, and it's probably going to look like what I just described before a few minutes ago. Let's dive down, though, a little bit deeper, though, into the goodies for West Virginia and Arizona. That's ultimately, who cares what they are? We should just give it to Sinema and Manchin, but just for the heck of it, let's just look at what they want, probably. In the case of Manchin, obviously it has to do with probably with coal, protecting the coal industry somehow, in particular West Virginia. And in particular, you got to remember that his family, their main income source is an electricity plant that they own that burns dirty local West Virginia coal. That's where they get their money from, the Manchin family. So, the coal industry in West Virginia only accounts for $13 billion a year. That's not a lot of money. The overall goal of the reconciliation bill is to get us away from fossil fuels. But that can be accomplished in a way that just subsidizes the West Virginia coal industry. It's only $13 billion a year, and the overall effect of the bill, even with props and subsidies for the West Virginia coal industry, would still be net positive in the sense of reducing overall American burning of carbon fuels and greenhouse gas emissions. So we ought to just give West Virginia $13 billion a year to subsidize their coal industry. Who cares? It's not important. And Manchin then would have a further corrupt personal motive to support the bill because then his family could continue to make money from their electricity plant. As for Sinema, the fossil fuel industry has absolutely no kind of role in Arizona's economy. So whatever she wants would be something separate and different, something for her state that they need or want. I don't care, whatever it is, just give it to her. And/or if she seems like a pretty corrupt individual, going to fundraisers with all the bad guys all the time, all these like horrible Republican corporate special interests. All right, give them some goodies too. Who cares? Doesn't matter. So those are the goodies for Manchin and Sinema. And as I said before, Gottheimer and the House will just go along with whatever they want. But it has to be in writing. You have to put it in writing. So now we have a moving target here. Then Biden gets him into a room and makes him hand him that piece of paper, and they agree to it. Okay. Now he dismisses them from that room, and he brings in the progressives, Bernie Sanders, Jayapal, I don't know, whoever else, just 2 or 3 people, the leaders, heads of the progressive caucus in both chambers. Bring them in and lock the door and send out for pizza, and don't let them leave. Do this in Camp David so they really can't escape. And just what LBJ would do, right? And don't let them leave until they agree to meet Manchin and Sinema at least halfway, and along the lines of what I just described, right? And at the end of the day, they've got to agree that this has to happen, right? Failure is not an option. All Democrats agree on that, it seems. From all the newspaper accounts I read, everyone says we can't fail here. This cannot be a train wreck, because then the Republicans will definitely get back at least one chamber of Congress in the next midterm election. basically opening the door for Trump in 2024. So that's not an option, failure. And I think the Progressive Caucus understands that. I really do. I'm not so sure about Manchin and Sinema. I'll get back to that in a minute. All right, so they agree to meet him halfway, right? And for the reasons already stated. Okay, then the next step, obviously, is bring back Manchin and Sinema back into the room, along with Pelosi and Schumer. And all the Democrats then agreed to this written document, and they agreed to have an immediate congressional vote. Isn't that what LBJ would do? Isn't it just so obvious? Come on. I mean, this isn't rocket science. And I don't understand why it's taking so long for people to figure this out. Now, I just said, all Democrats seem to agree that failure is not an option. However, there is, unfortunately, in history, examples of Democrats in Congress sinking a new Democratic president's main agenda item. Senator David Boren voted against both Bill Clinton's top economic plank, which was the energy tax, and he also helped to sink Hillary Care, Bill Clinton's signature health care reform initiative. And Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan piled on in that effort to sink Hillary Care. So both those guys were just quite happy to try to sink Clinton's entire presidency. Another near example to that was Ben Nelson, his behavior vis-a-vis Obamacare. He was acting like he was going to try to sink it, but then at the last possible moment, he did agree. Basically, Obama agreed to his demands, which was to water down the abortion provisions and to enact the infamous Cornhusker kickback. Google it if you don't know what that is. Ultimately, though, the bill did pass, and Ben Nelson was for it. So I'll leave you with this thought. I mean, this deal I just described seems to me self-evident. Should be simple to do. If we had an LBJ, it would definitely get done. And the only thing that can stop it, actually, is if in fact Sinema and Manchin intend to play the role of traitor, like a Moynihan, instead of the role of tough negotiator, like a Ben Nelson. That's really what this is all about. That's why it's vital as a first step to get them to put their demands in writing in the form of a single centrist Democrat proposal. So we have a moving target to deal with. And if they refuse to put it in writing in a coherent, clear way, then that's a pretty strong indication that they do in fact intend to be traitors. And unfortunately, we need their votes. It's not going to pass without them. So if they want to be traitors, they can sink the whole thing. If they are traitors, then they are showing that they want to cripple Biden. They want the Republicans to win the midterm election and take back Congress. And they also want to throw the door open to Donald Trump in 2024. So it's hard to imagine a worse form of treason. And if that's in fact what they are, we absolutely should primary them. So all progressive Democrats should gang up on them, recruit primary challengers, and take these fuckers out. And I would be dismayed if Biden, Schumer, and Pelosi didn't join in on that effort. They need to make examples out of it. In fact, this is what they're up to. But I'm not sure of that. They might just be Ben Nelsons. So we're going to find out. But we can only find out if we force them to come up with a single counteroffer in writing. And if they refuse to do that, then that's a very bad sign. However, if it turns out they are Ben Nelsons, then I see no reason in the world why this kind of deal I just described couldn't happen substantively and in terms of process, the way I just described it. So, Joe Biden, if you're listening, find your inner LBJ, okay? And just ask yourself a simple question. What would LBJ do?